Hello. Happy Sunday. As always, it is good to be here. Even if we are talking about things that aren't so much fun, aren't so happy, we can still find solidarity and hope in one another in hard times. It is with a heavy, heavy heart tonight that I tell you that there are some really difficult things we got to talk about. And it breaks my heart consistently to see some really at-risk communities and good people who are being threatened unnecessarily and are being targeted by hateful, bigoted, awful demographics. But we have to discuss it. First things first. Cheers to frank, good discussion. Always appreciate these things. They're a good opportunity to get to know one another, to establish community, but also to get the thoughts worked out, to begin thinking about the harder, bigger ideas. And it is with a lot of gratitude that I say thank you for coming here and for being there for one another, for maintaining hope and continuing to do this hard work. None of what we discuss is easy. And to be honest, the best things, including the future that I think we're going to build, are not going to happen easily. But by being there for one another, by establishing trust, by communicating, by engaging in solidarity, and by healing, we're going to get there. Um, we got questions tonight about what's going on in North Carolina, and we'll get to that in just a moment. That involves history, that involves larger discussions about trends and trajectories and material conditions. But I want to say first off that when we talk about building a better future, when we talk about making a better world, I think for some people, it's a matter of wanting it to happen with a snap of the fingers. And we've been taught that that's how things are supposed to happen. That's how our economy works, right? Currently in the holiday season, buying presents and things like that for the people we love, we expect those things to get to us as soon as humanly possible. When there is a delay and suddenly maybe something that seemed like it was going to take a day to 2 days, it suddenly takes 3 to 4. It almost feels like in some way, shape, or form that the universe itself is against us. That for whatever reason, the interruption of convenience it can feel personal. It can put a damper on things. This exchange of items and luxuries and such. A large reason why this has happened, and a large reason why we are in the position that we are in, is because we have been conditioned to believe that the world should work exactly according to our wants. And by wants, I'm talking about a lot of things that maybe we need or do not need. And in a way, the progress of the world, the way that politics work, the way that um, elections work, the way that movements work, we have been taught that our participation in all of this, um, particularly when it comes to how things are going to progress, how things are going to develop, that the best thing we can do is go out and vote and then hope that some way, shape, or form, it's almost like one of those, and maybe I'm going to age myself here, but it's like some of those stratomatic football games where you just put a bunch of players on like a sort of a vibrating field, and you hope against hope that they'll go in the direction that they need to go in. We're taught that's sort of how politics are, that we're supposed to believe that these people that we elect will maybe suddenly think of helping us, or maybe they'll figure out the right direction to go. And if something's going wrong, we need to just temper our own ideas, right? Those are the moments where we're supposed to have patience. Those are the moments where we are supposed to, expect these compromises, to expect things to not necessarily go in the way that we believe. And, politics, it's a game. It's a long game. You have to play the long game. And as a result, it becomes a spectator game. You it's like watching a football game, watching a basketball game, hoping hope against hope that your team gets the ball through the hoop or that your team happens to score a touchdown. That is not the truth. And I want to point out something. A large part of what we are going to talk about tonight is rising authoritarianism, extremism, and radicalization. And I'm not just talking about Kanye West, Nick Fuentes, Donald Trump, Alex Jones. We're going to talk about those things. But I'm also talking about paramilitary groups. I'm talking about militias. I'm talking about people who are targeting vulnerable people, gay Americans, trans Americans, women, people of color, people who are going out and have killed, right? We don't talk very much about that. We like to pretend that this is a very tense moment, but mostly a bloodless moment. It is not. It has been very bloody and it has been tragic. And we can pretend like some of these shootings and some of these mass slaughters, they really don't have anything to do with our politics. They're lone wolves. They're lone nuts. No, they're not. It's the exact same epidemic of violence and mental illness and white supremacy and patriarchy, evangelicalism, you name it. It's the same thing over and over and over again. I wrote about this a little bit on my Substack today. And there was this incident in Ohio where I want to say it was about three different right-wing groups showed up at a drag time story hour. And they showed up and they shut this thing down. This has happened all over the country. It's not an Ohio problem. It happened in Texas. It's not a Texas problem. It's an American problem. It's an everywhere problem. I spent a lot of time this weekend having conversations with people, really good people, really kind people, people who work hard, people who do it without much in the way of reward, people who have been exploited all of their lives. They have seen politicians and the media and everybody who has any sort of power or influence ignore them, look down at them, basically spit on them, never represent them. And I have to tell you, despite that, despite living lives of hard labor and toil and travail, these people were still so damn hopeful. And it's something I recognize with my people, with my family, with the people in my community, the people that I grew up with. A lot of the time, their exploitation and their broken bones and their broken bodies led to them being so downtrodden that at times it just seemed like the world was against them. But you know what they found? They found moments of hope and they found moments of joy and they found moments where they believed that things were going to get better. I had a lot of conversations this weekend while I was traveling and out and about. And I had conversations with people who are tired, who are exhausted, who see a political and media system that pays no attention to them, doesn't respect them, doesn't treat them with anything even approaching human decency or care. And they talked to me about the hope that they had. They talked to me about some of the things I've been saying lately about how I think we're going to go forward, what we're going to be able to do. They felt it. They said to me that they felt as if that was within reach, that things were changing, that there was something over the horizon that was possibly better, but almost to a person, and I share this concern. They told me that they felt like before they were able to reach that great new hope in the horizon, that there was going to be struggle. And they were 100% right. And it wasn't theoretical to these people. When you talk about the New York Times, you talk about the Washington Post, you talk about the networks, you talk about all these people who will say, oh my God, the Oath Keepers, oh my God, the 3%ers, you name it. These militias that you haven't even heard of before. This isn't theoretical to them. Their brothers are members of these militias. Their cousins are members of these militias. Their neighbors are members of these militias. They know so many white men who pick up AR-15s, who go out into the wilderness and plan to take over the government and destroy everything that even resembles democracy. These are the same people who overrun the Capitol on January 6th. These are the same people who say constantly that we are beyond liberal democracy. These are the same people that say that women should not have rights, that people of color should not count, and maybe it would be better if we just had a dictator. It's their brothers, it's their fathers, it's their cousins, it's their neighbors. That isn't theoretical. These people aren't on the outskirts. They're not barbarians, as we always like to tell ourselves. It's almost like, oh, they're raiding parties that will come in from out of nowhere and suddenly pose this threat. It's not us. It's something else. It's almost like another species, right? But it's not. It is among us and it is part of us. Fascism and Nazism were not just simply Western European phenomena of the early 20th century. It is part of the human condition, the ugly part of the human condition that we have to discuss tonight. And not only are we going to diagnose it, we're going to talk about how to defeat it and how to fight against it. And I'm not just talking about at the ballot box. I'm not just talking about out on the street, although we will talk about the ballot box and we will talk about the streets. I'm talking about on an individual level. I'm talking about in our relationships. I'm talking about in our worlds. I'm talking about in our neighborhoods. I'm talking about in our houses. The problem is among us. It is not outside of us. It has been brewing for forever. And I want to give you an example. We have a couple of questions to begin with. People want to talk about what happened in Moore County, North Carolina, and I'm more than happy to have that discussion. We don't have all the facts yet, but I'm telling you from everything that I've heard and all the people that I've talked to and the experts that I've discussed this with and the analysis that I've been given, I am fairly certain that we can say what has happened here. Let's get the first question, and then I want to have a conversation about history here. Lauren says, I know this is still a developing story, but can you talk about what's going on in Moore County, North Carolina with the attacks on the power substations and what appears to be an act of domestic terrorism aimed at stopping a drag show and 40,000 people who are now without power? I want to talk a little bit about North Carolina. I want to talk about something called the white supremacist campaign. This is in the Midnight Kingdom. I didn't know about it. I'd never heard about it. Not taught in my history classes. Not in the books that I read. It's something people know about. It's well trod in American history. But post-Civil War, the white members of I believe, Wilmington, North Carolina, they looked around. They saw that the black population was gaining political power, was making money. They were creating their own communities. They were creating their own spaces and wealth. They got together and they said, you know what? Democracy doesn't work for us. They had a meeting and they said, this is over. There was a statewide campaign calling itself white supremacy, saying that white men should never have to bow to people of color, black people. And what happened? They overthrew that government. They took it over through violence and by force. There was a coup in America. This is not new. These are echoes of something that has happened consistently. I can tell you that this is a new updated version. I can tell you that in my research, particularly in American rule and in the Midnight Kingdom, what I've found is that militias and paramilitaries, guess what they always talk about? They always talk about attacking infrastructure like power stations. Why? Because our power grid and our power infrastructure are so vulnerable and are so old because neoliberalism has made sure to invest no money in updating any public structures because they don't care about you having electricity. They don't care about me having electricity. And I'll be damned if they care about us having drinking water. They don't care about that. What matters is profit. Everything else, maybe you can get charged a premium to have electricity. Maybe you can be charged a premium to have drinking water. The white supremacists, the paramilitaries, the militias, and many of them, by the way, have been exploited by those same neoliberals, but also some of them are the ones who have exploited them. Those people who care about maintaining white male patriarchal supremacy. They have studied terrorist tactics. And I want to make this very clear because people are very flip about this online. People joke about this online all the time. They call it Al Qaeda, right? America's Taliban. Guess what? That's not a joke. What happened during the War on Terror when the insurgents held off American forces? They looked at that and they studied it. Why? Because they have many of the same goals that Al Qaeda and ISIS and Islamic fundamentalists have had. They have the exact same ideas. The ideas are this, that through religious ideology, through nationalist ideology, that they should be able to fight back against the power structure that they believe has turned against them, and that they should have control, that they should be able to enforce any and all rule that they want, which includes not just women, not having access to abortion. We're talking about women being covered up. We're talking about women not having rights of speech and voting and a right to a job or property. I am not joking. That's not an exaggeration. These people literally want to destroy any and all progress that we take for granted. And they looked at what Al Qaeda did. They looked at what ISIS did. They looked at what literal terrorists have done. And they looked at all of their plans. They looked at all of their rule books, and they basically Xeroxed them. It is domestic terrorism. And we are very vulnerable to it. I don't say this to make people afraid. I have no desire to profit off of terrorizing people. I'm sorry to talk about this. This is why we do this. This is why we have these live streams. This is why we have these talks. We can have fun. Somebody asked about the college football playoff. I'll answer that question later. That's fine. There are some nights it's a little bit lighter than others. Sometimes it's more hopeful than others. I'm here to tell you there's hope tonight. But also, if we're going to talk about hope, we have to talk about hope's twin sibling, which is terror. And what does terror do? What is terror there to do? It's there to literally kill any idea of hope. It's there to make you feel like, oh my God, these people will do anything. These people will hurt us. These people will kill us. These people will leave us in the dark. They will take away our water. They will poison us. We have to talk about it. It's not just something beyond the borders. It's not just something that is a phenomenon that we can just let go. This has always been there. It has always terrorized us. It just so happens that some of us are seeing it for the first time. But I will also go ahead and I will say something, and this is hard. And I hope that we've done this enough times. I hope that you've read my stuff enough and that you've heard me talk about it enough. But we need to be very, very honest about it. There's a little bit of white privilege in this. The idea that, oh my God, they have guns. Oh my God, they're going to hurt us. Oh my God, like if we don't give them what they want, if we don't go ahead and sacrifice gay people and trans people and people of color and women, if we don't go ahead and just give them what they want, they're going to hurt us. That is something that middle class, bourgeois white people, they've been making that deal for generations. It is not a deal that we can make. Because I have to tell you, there are a lot of people who are depending on us to not make that deal. There are a lot of people who, if you make that deal, they're the ones who get their rights taken away. They're the ones who get assaulted. They're the ones who get hurt. They're the ones who get killed. They're the ones who get thrown away. They are the people that fall through the cracks. That is not a deal that I'm going to make, and you better damn well not make that deal either. This isn't fun. This isn't great. This isn't light. This isn't something to scoff at. Our brothers and our sisters and our neighbors and our families are living in fear right now, rightful fear. And I'll be damned if I'm going to read a bunch of newspapers and magazines and news shows sit there and talk about, oh, trans people are asking too much. Well, maybe we need to move towards the center. That's the only way to get rid of this. I'm sorry. This is a disease that we have to deal with. We have to combat this thing head on. And if we don't, I have to tell you this, they're going to cannibalize the people that they're going after. The gay people, the trans people, the women, the people of color, the poor. They're going to cannibalize them, and I got bad news for you. If you're checking out this stream because you're rubbernecking and you want to see what I have to say about it, they're going to come for you too. Because the way this game works is this. There are people at the very, very top, billionaires, oligarchs, call them what you want. They are the ones who are competing over concentrated capital. They are the ones who have bought islands because they think when things get out of control and we're the ones dying and suffering from global climate change and the thrust of fascism, they're gone. Those are the ones who are planning on going to Mars. Okay? You're not one of those. Unless, I don't know, Elon Musk is getting his jollies watching this thing. Maybe he is. I don't think he has anything better to do besides killing people with his stupid cars. But I have to tell you, you cannot make that deal. You cannot look away. You cannot pretend like this thing is going to go away on its own. We have to get busy fighting this, and we have to get busy healing ourselves, our neighborhoods, our communities, and our families. And that's what we're going to talk about. The second question is from Rob. Rob says, what do I say to my 10th graders about recent events, particularly my LGBTQIA plus students who are feeling more and more like they're in real danger? First things first, they're in real danger. If you'll allow me, this is one of the reasons this upsets me the way that it does. When I was a professor, I had a lot of students who, I was down in rural Georgia. Tony, I'm going to talk about what we can do. I promise. When I was a professor, I worked in rural Georgia in this little public university. We had a lot of students who'd come from places like Atlanta or Savannah. A lot of them were gay, a lot of them were trans, a lot of them didn't feel safe in their own homes and in their own communities. They'd been harassed, they'd been assaulted. A lot of them were minorities who looked around and they saw that the world was coming for them and that the people they thought were going to have their backs didn't have their backs. We did the only thing that we could do. We created families. We created intentional families. We created safe places. And I'm not talking about the safe places that the New York Times likes to talk about. I'm not talking about the ones that right-wingers sneer at. I'm talking about actual places where human beings could be authentic and safe. They were endangered. I saw people harassed. I saw people threatened. I saw people stalked. I dealt with the aftermath of people being hurt. I still deal with the aftermath of a lot of people who get hurt in all of this. It's not theoretical. They are in danger. And Rob, first of all, I want to say I'm so glad that you asked this question because that tells me that you are not only a good ally, but you're a good person. And we need more good people. What you need to tell your students is that the danger is real, but they need to know that there are people who have their backs. And there are many different ways of having people's backs. It can be as simple as asking how people are. It can be as simple as reassuring people that they're okay, that there's nothing wrong with them. And even if the entire world turns against them, it doesn't mean that they're bad, because they're not. Because what does authoritarianism and fascism tell us? It tells us that we're wicked and we're gross and we're disgusting and that we deserve to be destroyed. And maybe, almost like a religion, maybe if you put on the armband and maybe if you do the Nazi salute and maybe if you go to the right rallies and maybe if you pledge your blood and treasure and soil to the right movement, maybe then you can be redeemed. If it sounds like being saved in evangelicalism, you're damn right that's exactly what it is. It's the exact same thing. You need to let them know that the problem isn't with them. That's what we need to tell all of these vulnerable people. That's what we need to tell ourselves. The problem isn't us. The problem isn't ourselves. The problem is that we live in a sick society. We live in a society that is completely and utterly wired for the benefit of white, wealthy people. It doesn't work. We're getting a crash course every single day in the fact that hereditary wealth and power and privilege, it actually doesn't work at all. It actually destroys everything. The funny part that is that like modern events show us that this has been happening for a long damn time. It just so happens we have a front row seat with instantaneous 24/7 news coverage and social media. It just so happens that we are currently watching all of these failing men, these failing pathetic worms. We are watching them fail every single day in new and shocking ways. The problem isn't us. The problem is them. The problem is that they won't take care of their shit. The problem is that they won't heal. The problem is that they don't even know how to heal. They don't even know how to look in the mirror because they hate themselves. Because this system is so rigged that even taking a moment to think about why you go in public with an AR-15 covered in camouflage in order to attack people who are expressing themselves and being normal, decent human beings in a community, the problem isn't those people. The problem isn't gay people. The problem isn't trans people. The problem isn't people of color. The problem isn't poor people. The problem is the people who will not look at themselves in the mirror. First and foremost, your students and your friends and your family members. And I want to be very clear about this. You deserve to hear that you aren't wrong. You aren't wicked. This system is disgusting. It doesn't work. It is failing. And as the system fails, it is co-opting people who cannot deal with themselves and cannot heal and cannot get better. And it is using them as defenders. And I can't make it any more clear than that. And I can't tell you how grotesque that is. Because if you really look at it on the face, and if you really start to deal with what is happening in this country and what is happening in this society, it is so grotesque and horrific that it makes my skin crawl. I want to take a shower. It makes me so repulsed. Let them know they're safe. Let them know there's nothing wrong with them. Let them know they're loved. That's the first step in all of this. Because all of this is about a movement that is attempting to make us feel disgusting and make us feel alone and to make us feel like we're powerless. And that the only means of salvation is putting on the armband, doing the goose step, going to the rallies. But we have to talk about it. They're what's wrong. They're the unhealthy ones. They're the ones that need help. Two questions together, and we'll answer them together. Dara says, I read your Substack about domestic terrorism and insecure men. It felt right, or rather, I think I should say I recognize this from my own experience. Is there hope here? Can men change? $64,000 question, right? Alfonso says, how do we deal with friends or family members who have been consumed with conspiracy theories and some of the LGBT hate we're saying? First things first, there's nothing more dangerous than an insecure white man. They have been taught from the beginning of their lives that the world should belong to them. And when it doesn't belong to them, or when there's even a moment of inconvenience, and particularly if they feel emasculated, a gun and violence are pretty good answers. And it's not just an inherent power in guns. I want to make this very, very clear. They're being sold to them in that way. The way that these guns, particularly these assault rifles, are being sold to people is through a psychological appeal that takes advantage of something really insidious, which is that so much of our economy and so much of consumerism is built on the insecurity of false gender identity. Men cannot be that strong because it doesn't exist. In fact, men are often very weak and men are very emotional. If you actually take a look at the science, it's kind of incredible. Men, before they're socialized and before they go through ritual abuse through other men, they are actually more often more emotional than women. That's true. That's actually true. And as a result, after all of that abuse and all of that socialization, and they're told that they have to be strong and silent and keep it all within, and they always have to be under control, guess what? Sigmund Freud's theories through Edward Bernays and everybody who follows those ideas, they use the masculine contradictions to go ahead and sell them products that are going to make them feel big and strong and in control. As a result, the moment that a white man suddenly feels like his life is out of control, and I'm not talking politically, we haven't gotten to the politics yet. We're talking personally, we're talking psychologically, we're talking socially. When a man, particularly a white man, feels insecure, they need something to go ahead and bring them forward and make them feel secure again. Otherwise, they're going to face so much internal tension. And guess what? They're going to choose to hurt other people before they let it hurt themselves. The fact that guns are sold to insecure men taking advantage of their insecurity is part of the problem. It's the idea that they need these guns. Otherwise, their families might be hurt and they'll be emasculated. They need these guns because guess what? The government might come and get them. It's the ultimate in emasculation. It is a psychological tactic that has worked so well. And by the way, it's not just guns. It's a whole host of products, my friends. Everything from vehicles to clothes to houses, you name it. Our economy is built on the fact that men are insecure and they need to buy products in order to make themselves feel more secure. It's what keeps this wretched economy going. By the way, there are parts of this to women as well. Now, I know you can make those connections. Are men who go down this road irredeemable? Some. Some it's just not going to happen, and you need to take care of yourself and make sure they don't hurt you. And that's heartbreaking. And I have to tell you, it's always been a problem. We've seen just amazing amounts of abuse and assaults and murder. I mean, my God, wars, genocides have been caused by masculine insecurity. Sometimes the best thing you can do is get away from it and save yourself. Some can be helped, and it's not going to happen politically. It's not going to happen by arguing slogans, by saying, hey, you need to vote for Joe Biden. That doesn't work. It just doesn't. Why? Because the basis of our two-party political system is based on the binary of what we're talking about, which is there is a political movement behind Donald Trump and within the Republican Party, within libertarianism, you name it. All of these things feed off masculine insecurity. And by the way, if you haven't connected the dots yet, fascism and Nazism and authoritarianism feed off masculine insecurity. You don't pick up an AR-15 and walk around your town in fatigues if you feel decent about yourself. We have a mental health crisis in this country. It's a big part of this. And not only do we have a mental health crisis that is a side consequence or a major consequence of capitalism, and by the way, a lot of psychological conditions have their basis in the fact that this society makes us live inauthentically and makes us live unhealthily. So you have a lot of these conditions that aren't being dealt with. But you also have a political project that is completely based, and this is the terrifying part of it, it is based on telling white men, you're not the problem. The exact opposite of what we're talking about right now. It says, you are strong. You're a realist. And the people who say, hey, you don't make me feel good. Hey, you make me feel unsafe. Hey, you make me feel bad. Hey, I don't feel safe with you. They're the ones with the problems. And by the way, not only are they the ones with the problems, there's a conspiracy to make them feel that way. They don't even actually feel that way. They're just weak. They're being manipulated. By the way, there's a Jewish cabal that's taking advantage of this. There's a satanic conspiracy that's taking advantage of this. They're not telling you the truth when they say that they would like you to be better to them. They are under the sway of evil plans, people in smoky rooms. That is a whole lot easier to deal with than the truth, which is that you need to work on yourself, that you need to look in the mirror and think about who you are. The way you deal with these people is you deal with their conditions in their lives. I have seen so many people that I love and I care about go down the conspiracy rabbit holes. I've seen them absolutely radicalized to the point where not only are they sharing memes, they're joining these militias. They're talking about destroying liberal democracy. They're talking about murdering people. They're talking about taking away the rights of women and gay and trans and people of color. They're talking about genocide. And it all starts with personal crisis. It's a cult. And we need to talk about cult programming. People are looking for an answer. This is how religions get people. This is how cults get people. This is how scams get people. This is how grifts get people. This is how clubs get people. People who are lonely and people who feel powerless. And white, insecure men are all of those things more than almost anybody. They are being scammed for their money. There are all these male influencers who are selling them supplements and, basically telling them how to get ripped or do whatever. There are all kinds of men who are being taken for their money for guns, for giant vehicles, for all of these accoutrements of wealth and prestige. They're supposed to show people how big and strong of a man you are. But they're also being taken for a ride by people like Donald Trump. They're being taken for a ride by the GOP. They're being taken for a ride by Alex Jones. They're being taken for a ride from all of the people who are using things like QAnon for their own personal advantage. And my God, are they being taken for a ride by paramilitaries and militias? You can't confront them about the conspiracy theories. You can reframe conspiracy theories. You can talk about, oh, it's not actually this, it's this. You can actually have a conversation, but you have to move beyond the bipolar idea of politics. It can't be Democrat versus Republican, Biden versus Trump. It can't be, because those things are specifically designed for marketing niches. It's one of the problems in our political economy. You have to talk to them about them, because it's their personal crisis. It's what's going on inside of them. It's their trauma. It's the abuse they've gone through. It's how lonely they feel. And you'll notice, if you have men in your life who have done this, if you have seen men in your life become radicalized, I want you to think about it. And I want you to really sit hard with this for a while. And I want you to take a look at when Trump came around and when these conspiracy theories came around and when all of this turned into a big, ugly, poisonous cesspool. And I almost guarantee you, to a person, you are going to find personal crises. You're going to find loss of jobs. You're going to find financial change. You're going to find divorces. You're going to find mental health crises. You're going to find that the thing that they are going through on their interior, on their inside, with their mental health, with their own personhood, you are going to find that that is linked directly to how they are interacting with the world. This is a mental health crisis as much as it is a political and societal crisis. The way we can even try and make things work. And by the way, if they have you in danger, if they put you in a bad place, take care of yourself. Because again, there's nothing more dangerous than an insecure white man. But if you can talk to them and ask them how they are safely, find out what's going on. Some of them haven't talked about their feelings in years, if ever. I was able to get my father back before he passed, before he died 10 years ago. He basically didn't talk to anybody for 30 years. And I was able to finally ask him what was going on the inside, and he was able to talk to me. I've had friends, I've had family members, I've had acquaintances who have gone down these rabbit holes. And what I found is that when I talked to them, when I actually talked to them about who they were, and they knew that they could talk about their feelings and what they had gone through, it started to bring them back. These things don't happen in a vacuum. They are reactions to personal, societal, economic, and political crises. They go to these things because they need to belong. Because neoliberalism hollowed out our society. It put us in these tight, tight prisons. It traumatized us. It put us through so many awful circumstances to make us feel alone. When we felt alone, we spent money to feel less alone and to feel less insecure. We went ahead and joined groups like that. We believed in these conspiracy theories and cults because we were desperate for something. We don't have to sacrifice ourselves. We don't have to sacrifice our politics. We don't have to sacrifice our future. We don't have to sacrifice our species when it comes to global climate change and the threat of militarism coming out of this fascism. We can have better lives. It is so obvious what has happened here. It is so obvious how we arrived here and what people need. If we can recreate something that makes us feel like we have others and that we have hope and faith in one another and that we're not disgusting and have to project that self-hatred on other people, my God, we can change everything. I think it's possible. I really, truly, honestly do. And I've seen it happen. It happened to me. My God, I don't know who I would be if I didn't start taking a look in the mirror and working on things. But I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I think there's hope. I really, truly do. PC Christensen says, Jared, I can't help but wonder why the FBI, DOJ appear silent on informing the nation about the domestic terrorist attacks and threats we're experiencing. Am I living in the past? What could they be thinking? I'm old enough. I'm 41 years old. I have seen law enforcement and law enforcement agencies and government institutions turn a blind eye to white domestic terrorism my entire life because they don't believe in it. It actually goes ahead and pushes against why they exist. The DOJ and the FBI, the CIA, you name it, these are their own selves white supremacist capitalistic institutions. They are there to protect the state from people who would undermine the state. In this case, like if you actually have people who are trying to undermine the federal government and or the market, oh my God, they would take care of those people. And I have to tell you, I think they're going to find whoever did this North Carolina thing because my God, it has plunged the entire community into darkness and has led to ding, ding, ding. This is the thing that they're all worried about. Loss of property. Oh my God. Holy shit. We should probably sound the alarms. It's a loss of property. They're not talking about it necessarily because one, they're waiting to collect information, but also they don't actually want to have a discussion about white domestic terrorism. They'd rather pretend it doesn't exist. They would like to focus on leftist, the few that are out there. They would rather focus on black radicals and people of color who could possibly threaten white supremacy. And by the way, most of these people, if you got them in the room and you were like, oh my God, are you white supremacists? They'd be like, oh my God, are you kidding me? No, I'm not racist at all. Many of them are unwittingly serving white supremacist capitalism. Some of them know what they're doing. Some of them know. But most of them probably don't because it's ingrained. It's so within the structures of our lives that we can't even see it sometimes. It's like the old anecdote, the fish in the water. How's the water? What's water? But yeah, they're not interested in white domestic terrorism. They have missed this for years and years and years. In fact, and I've been looking at this a lot lately because I'm working on like the new book proposal and thinking more about sort of this modern era through a particular lens. They missed the boat when it came to terrorism. The problem wasn't Islamic terrorism. The problem was domestic white terrorism. They missed it because it was so obvious that it was out there. Same thing with these paramilitary groups and militias. Oh, the problem's over there. It's not in here. And meanwhile, what they do, they just used all of their resources and all of their power in order to go ahead. And this is funny because as they were going after Islamic terrorism, it's really weird that as you're going after Al Qaeda and ISIS, you're opening up new markets. Isn't it weird how, like, in order to defend yourself, you have to expand your territory and your power? Isn't it really strange how in order to protect yourself, you're actually like furthering your advantage and furthering how you're a hegemonic power? It's weird how those things happen. I assume that's just a massive coincidence. instead of attacking white domestic terrorism, which is always in defense of white supremacy and capitalism. It's really odd. Absolutely weird. I agree. Really strange. So that's why they're quiet. It's a long way of answering that. Shirley says, regarding Trump, Kanye, and the silence from almost the entire GOP, it seems like the Overton window has seen significant movement this week. Time to panic. Not time to panic, but time to take note. For those who don't know, the Overton window is the political concept that there is a range of acceptable political and social opinions. There are things you can say, things you can't say, things that you can get away with, things that would get you canceled. The Overton window shifts. Right now, it is so far right that it's almost falling off of the scale. What is going on with anti-Semitism? And by the way, I'll talk about Trump here in a second, but I'll go ahead and start with Kanye, Alex Jones, Nick Fuentes, all of these assholes. What has happened at this point? And it isn't time to panic in the traditional sense, as in, oh my God, everything's done and there's nothing we could possibly do. It is time to take note of the fact that this thing is evolving. And this is what I talked about forever. If you go back, just go and Google it if you want. I was talking about this in 2016. I was telling people, my God, there's something really fascistic that's developing with Trumpism. People are like, oh my God, he's a sideshow. What a hilarious thing. You're not a serious person. It was obvious. And it has been obvious for years where this thing was going. These people are crypto fascists. They're crypto Nazis. And when we say crypto, we're talking about the fact that they hide it, right? Or at least they used to hide it. They do little clever things, they talk about Western civilization. That's a real great thing that they talk about. Or attacks on men, white men, attacks on white culture, of course, replacement theory, all of that stuff, right? They like to go ahead and sort of dance around it. Tucker Carlson, by the way, is the ultimate crypto Nazi if you want to understand who these people are, okay? But let me tell you something. That mask that they wear, sometimes they like to take it off. In fact, they would love to get to a point where they could just take that mask off all the time and just be out in the open. They pick their moments. And right now they have a moment. And the reason that they have a moment is because there is a crisis that is taking place. They have a crisis because democratic energies are growing. The institutions that they all relied on to go ahead and do their bidding, they're wonky, right? If this was a bridge, this bridge is starting to fall apart, right? And if they don't take care of it, and if they don't go ahead and refortify it using authoritarianism, this thing, it's going to fall all the damn way through. So what is happening? What is happening is that they are normalizing fascism, anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, because that is always the pressure valve that the powerful turn to. Whenever things get really hard and people start saying, what in the hell is going on? Who's responsible? It's always been break in case of emergency. Hey, it's the Jews. Over there. You should go after them. It's not me. I don't have all of your money. I'm not an oligarch. I'm not the one who has gotten over $6 trillion has been redistributed since the 1980s. I want to repeat that in case there's anybody who just jumped in here or anybody who needs to hear it again. 6 trillion. TRILLION. I was a runner-up in my second grade spelling bee. I like to throw that around every now and then. I like to talk about my credentials and my bona fides. $1 trillion. And by the way, Scott says, I thought it was even higher. That's only what they've proven. God knows how much has been laundered and how much has been redistributed. That's how much money was taken from the working class and the middle class and transferred up to like the 1% of the population. There's a reason why these people have space programs. So what happens? The people at the space programs, the people who got the trillions of dollars, they're not going to take responsibility for that. Oh, it was me. I'm sorry. Maybe I should go ahead and give you back some of my money. Hey, I'll tell you what, I'll give up on this Mars colonization thing where I was going to be a techno-feudal king on the red planet. I'll give up on that. That way I can go ahead and give back some of this capital and we can make this thing work again. They're not going to do that. My God. What are you looking at me for? I'm trying to make the world better. I'm trying to extend human consciousness into the stars. You should check out the Jews over there. I think they're responsible. And you'll notice if you spend all of your time actually tracing what white supremacy and what like male driven patriarchal oligarchical culture, what they do, they say the Jews take over media. They say the Jews take over culture. They say the Jews rig politics. These people are the ones who do it. What are they doing? They buy the media. They go ahead and try and take over culture. They're the ones who are trying to take over the educational system so they can indoctrinate. They're the ones who are trying to take away democracy. What are they doing? They're projecting what they do on a group of people over here who are vulnerable. And it's what they've always done. It's what they've always done. Oh, Teresa says the promise gives some percentage to charity. Do not get me started on charitable foundations by the rich. Holy God. Y'all don't want to spend the rest of the night here. I have a full bottle of booze, but you don't want to see me drink it and talk about charitable foundations. Holy shit. Woo! Hoo-hoo-hoo! One of these days, by the way, I'll tell you a story. Story that like curled my hair. Oh, man, that is some bad stuff right there. As the charitable foundation is one of the most insidious inventions that we have ever seen. It is so bad. Actually, we're going to talk a little bit about it here in a bit. We're going to talk about FTX and the Democratic Party here in just a second. But yeah, so that's what's happened. That is what has occurred in terms of anti-Semitism. What we're seeing right now, very obviously, is that we are going to the next level. We are in like the next level up in terms of this societal crisis. Now, one thing to remember, and this is something I say all the time, so I'll go ahead and repeat it for you now. Times of extreme danger represent crises, but they also represent moments of malleability. That means as the crypto fascists are taking off their masks and they're talking about anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and destroying democracy, it is the time where we can change the world. It's the time where we can go ahead, reject them, and go ahead and reject the status quo and all these institutions that have been rigged from the start and find something new. We have that ability. It's that fact that fascists want us to be so terrified of their violence and so terrified of what they might do to us that we wouldn't, oh my God, we should probably just let them do whatever they want and that'll be fine. They do it because they understand that there's more of us and that we have better ideas and we have better energy and we have better power. The only thing that they have is terror and fear. But if we cede the ground to them, if we cede the energy to them, they'll just roll over us and destroy us. But they are vulnerable, and right now is a moment of malleable change. I promise. If we go ahead and we rebuild these structures of trust and faith in one another and faith in the ability to change things, we'll defeat them. Believe it. Baden, I caught your Reddit AMA. It was kind of great, so thank you for that. Thank you. That was something I always wanted to do. I had never done one of these Reddit Q&As. I did it over on or Reddit AMAs. I did it over on Our Politics. It was a good time. I'll tell you the thing that was really fun. I'm a fast typer. It comes from OCD hyperfixation when I was younger. When I learned to type, I got really obsessed with it. I'd watch TV, I'd listen to the radio, and I'd like air type what I was hearing. I got very, very fast at typing. I do a little bit over 90 words a minute. And it becomes like a fixation for me. So I love doing that AMA. I was answering questions so fast. That was enjoyable. So got the Reddit AMA for the Midnight Kingdom. It says, pre-order the Midnight Kingdom. This guy right here. Midnight Kingdom. Available for pre-order. I hope you read it. Really proud of this thing. It talks a little bit about what we're talking about here, but is also a lot more. My first question is, are you heading to Ohio at all on the book tour? And second, you answered a question about staying sane and hopeful. I was wondering if you could get into that more here. Okay, we're coming up on an hour, this is a good moment to talk about this, and then we'll finish up with the rest of the questions. First things first, I would love to come to Ohio. What I keep saying to people is if you want me to come to your area, to your local bookstore, get a hold of the bookstore. Say, I want Jared Yates Sexton to come through. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get in my car. I'm going to drive out and I'm going to hang out with you and maybe 100 of your closest friends. I love doing these things. I want to go out. I want to talk to people. I want to mix it up. I want to get to meet people. I want to make contacts. I want to start building these structures. So call your local bookstore, email your local bookstore and say, I'm not going to take no for an answer. I want Jared Yates Sexton to come out. I'll make that happen. I was actually just talking to a bookstore the other day and somebody did that. That like made my day. That was really kind. So, I'll come out, I'll find some people out there that I can talk to and have a good conversation and we'll go from there. So yeah, if you want me in Ohio, have me come out in Ohio. I'm in. Absolutely. Second question, how I stay sane. I'll answer this in the few minutes until we get to, the Decatur Book Festival is one of my favorite things. And I will absolutely come to a library. Absolutely. Decatur Book Festival, beautiful, beautiful time. Would love to come out there again. How do I stay sane? I'll go ahead and say that for me, it's a bunch of things. One, learning about this stuff and researching it. That's how I maintain my sense of control. I want to know how these things work. I want to break them down. And one of the things that we have to do, whether or not it's reading a book like The Midnight Kingdom or reading other books in conversation with it, we all need to understand the systems and structures of power that have been affecting us our entire lives. They've been happening in the background. You just didn't know it. You probably suspected it, but we have to educate ourselves. That goes ahead and helps with our anxiety and also gives us the ability to learn and then put that into action. But I will go ahead and say, to bring it full circle from what I was talking about a while ago, you have to heal. Because one of the things that happens in all of this is that capitalism and authoritarianism and all of these structures, these oppressive, patriarchal, capitalistic structures, they are inflicting trauma on you every single day. You aren't good enough. You're disgusting. People don't actually like you. People are going to betray you. On top of that, like, you don't have anybody close to you. Because there's something wrong with you. You should probably look into some products to fix that. And by the way, like, you're probably one or two paychecks or one thing going wrong from being just absolutely destitute and destroyed. It's what keeps you going to work. It's what makes sure that you keep your health insurance, because you're not going to leave your job, even though you're mistreated, even though you're exploited, even though you're absolutely treated like disposable dirt constantly. On top of that, my God, the cultural controls, that poison that is just absolutely injected into us, how we're supposed to behave, who we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to act, how we're supposed to go through this world. You're not even allowed to figure out who yourself is. And my God, the idea of trying to figure that out and the idea of trying to live authentically and being out in the world, oh my God, that makes you vulnerable. Who wants that, right? I'd rather sit at home and do nothing. My God, I'll just leave me alone. Don't threaten me. We have to work on ourselves. We have to shovel out this poisonous shit before it kills us, before it turns us into those people, before it goes ahead and continues poisoning society. We've been fed a false bill of goods since the day that we were born. We were told we're supposed to be one way. We're supposed to fit into one box, a narrow, narrow cage that has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with you. We have to heal from that. We have to start asking questions about who we actually are. We have to start asking questions about what we actually care about. We have to start asking questions about what it is that we actually want in life. Because my God, the more that we hate ourselves, the more that we actually push against who we actually are, the more likely we are that we're going to pick up that gun, we're going to put on that armband, we're going to learn how to goose step, and we're going to go to that rally. Or we're going to feel alone and we're going to let them do it. Therapy helps. Talking with other people helps. Being honest helps. Communicating helps. Being more courageous than afraid helps. It's hard. And we have to build trust and solidarity and truth and movements that are going to change the world. That's how I stay sane, and that's how I think we're going to make this world better. We're coming up on 1 hour. I traditionally finish my drink at 1 hour, and then I pour another one, and I finish my questions. I wanna say thank you. I've really been feeling these bourbon talks lately. I've been feeling really good about this, and you're a big part of that. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, to a better world. The war begins with us, and the war begins with saying no to these awful structures that never had anything to do with us in the first place. These structures were created explicitly for white, wealthy men to maintain their power and their wealth. They were meant to keep us under heel. They were meant to keep us from understanding how many of us there were and how we were more powerful than them. It was the only way possible that they were going to maintain control in the face of overwhelming numbers. And so as a result, we have to absolutely exercise all of that poisonous self-harm. It is hard, hard work. But when we begin to do it, I think we can begin to form that solidarity and those links in those communities that are going to make the difference. This isn't holding hands around a campfire stuff, although, why not hold hands around a campfire? This isn't change yourself before you change the world, but it is. Like, these are the ways that you actually become revolutionary. You have to start believing in something better inside of yourself so you can find something better in the world. I truly, honestly believe that. Truly, honestly believe that. Steph, I really agreed with how pissed off you were about the way the president screwed over the rail workers. Amen. What an absolute horseshit injustice that was. For those who don't know, there was a massive rail strike that was brewing. It was being negotiated for a good long time. The Biden administration was trying to work within that deal. And then when it looked like there was a possibility of a strike that could possibly affect the economy, oh my God, could you imagine? It might affect the economy. What if the Christmas presents didn't get there on time? Whew. They forced them to take a deal that they didn't want. And on top of that, they submarined any package that would have allowed them to have sick days. They have turned them into a skeleton crew that is completely and utterly exploited. They are sure to sacrifice their bodies, their well-being, their mental health, their physical health. And the Biden administration made it happen. Congress made it happen. The Democratic Senate made it happen. Never forget that. I don't care what else they do. I don't care if they do something good. I don't care if they pass something that's decent. We are not cultists. We don't sit here and make excuses for when a politician does something wrong or harmful. We don't sit here and follow a QAnon-like idea in which, oh my God, Joe Biden is better than Donald Trump, and as a result, he's perfect. The Democratic Party is perfect. My God, they're not perfect. They've got so many problems, we can't even list them all right now. This country would be a whole lot better if the Democratic Party hadn't completely sold out their principles in the 1980s and the 1990s and sold their soul to corporations and the wealthy. If they hadn't have turned their back on unions and labor and people of color and the poor and women. Democratic Party, speaking of healing, needs to take a look in the mirror and start to understand that they have moved so far beyond anything that is recognizable in terms of principles that I don't even know if they can get back to them. At least not these people. I think, first of all, and I'll go ahead and say this clearly, I think it's going to take us pressuring the Democratic Party, because otherwise it's either us continuing to vote for them while millionaires and billionaires continue to shovel cash at them, so they'll make sure that they'll support things like FTX and NFTs and cryptocurrency, and on top of that, make sure that they don't go after the corporations and tax them, or the trusts and the monopolies. I am so pissed off at the Biden administration for doing this. I said it on the Muckrake podcast the other day. It's not Reagan threatening to fire the air traffic controllers, but it's a blow to labor. And I have to tell you, the burgeoning labor movement right now is nothing short of revolutionary and inspiring. They're taking on Starbucks. They're taking on Apple. They're taking on Amazon, the richest, most powerful corporations in the history of the world. And they're beating them. There's something to learn from that. It's not to be feared. And this rail strike might have been uncomfortable, but sometimes you need discomfort. Sometimes you need labor strife. Sometimes you need to go ahead and upset the apple cart and figure out how it's supposed to work in the first place. The problem is the inherent contradictions of capitalism, which means concentrated wealth, making it so that there's not circulation and people can't buy goods and keep the economy working. Turns out it doesn't work. And when the Democratic Party stands up every time for the wealth class, you don't have the opportunity to put things right. You don't allow the labor market to actually find a decent equilibrium that worked, something that, I don't know, someone like a Franklin D. Roosevelt stood for. It is maybe time that we have a little labor discomfort. It's maybe time that we start to look around and say, hey, maybe me getting these goods quickly, maybe me getting these goods cheaply, maybe it's coming at the expense of other people. Maybe there are workers who their bodies and their lives and their families and their mental health are being sacrificed so I can get my goods, so I can get the things from Amazon on time. Maybe it's time that we start thinking about the fact that things like this phone come at the expense of so many human beings around the world that I don't have to think about. Maybe it's time we have to take a look in the mirror. And again, maybe we have to start healing. And the fact that we keep saying, well, it's the economy, we can't mess around with that. Oh, it's the supply chains, we can't mess around with that. Maybe it's time we had a crisis. And maybe it's time that a crisis makes us think about who we are and how we process things. Because that privilege and that comfort, it is coming at the expense of living, breathing, decent human beings who are just like you. And if you were on the other side of that deal, if you were being sacrificed, you wouldn't feel great about it, would you? Think about that. Sit with it. Got more. Vivaldi's help me understand the right's obsession with Hunter Biden, especially why they believe focusing on it is politically helpful to them. Aren't most Americans nowhere near online enough to care about this stuff, or do they think by focusing on it they can make people care? First things first, the Republican Party and their base are incredibly online. They are so online. They talk consistently in internet jargon and speak in internet stories and headlines. The reason they keep talking about Hunter Biden is for the same reason that they talk about any of this stuff, the Clinton crime network, the Clinton crime family. It's the only thing that they've got. It's to go ahead and put a story out there that says, hey, I know you're hearing a lot of stuff about us talking about Jews, but hey, don't you know that these people are over here and they're corrupt and they're dangerous and they're criminals? It's just throwing something out there to go ahead and help with the cognitive dissonance. It allows people to go ahead and construct a story. They don't have to think about the fact that you have rampant anti-Semitism or you have Donald Trump talking about destroying the Constitution. Don't you know that Hunter Biden is over here doing this and Biden's doing that? It's just basically flack. It's like if you saw the new Top Gun movie as like a missile is being shot at like a jet. They let loose a bunch of like flares and stuff that go ahead and make sure that the missile might not hit them. It is just a story to keep the story and the project and the grift going. On that same note, Janelle says, well, all this talk about Hunter Biden from the GOP, why do you think House Democrats didn't care to investigate Jared and Ivanka while they had the chance to? Because the Democratic Party doesn't want to upturn the apple cart. They don't want to attack institutions. They don't want to go after powerful people. They don't want to be seen as being radical. The Republican Party doesn't care about that. Chaff. Somebody said chaff. It's chaff. That's the right word. It's chaff. That's the right word right there. And by the way, just to remind everybody, the Monica Lewinsky thing with Bill Clinton happened because of a real estate deal. You start with a scandal and you get in and you look around and you find whatever you can, use it as a weapon. That's all that is. But the Democratic Party has no interest whatsoever in investigating people like Jared and Ivanka. Jared and Ivanka are considered the good Trumps. They're considered the respectable Trumps. They're the ones who play ball. They're the ones who play a part of this massive scam that everybody's involved with. Jared and Ivanka can go to happy hours. Jared and Ivanka can go to book releases. They can go to parties. They are part of the institution. They have no desire whatsoever to go after them. They would have much rather that Trump just went away. They have no actual desire to prosecute him unless he wants to go ahead and run for office again. He has served his purpose. They're done with him. But the Democrats had absolutely no desire to investigate Jared and Ivanka. They would much rather have them to their book releases and their parties and their garden parties. That's it. Earl says, basically rhetorical, but still amazed that every Democrat and most Republicans are not screaming and disavowing Trump after saying the Constitution should be terminated. He still believes 2020 election was stolen. Where are Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal denouncing this, liberal media, LMFAO? I mean, Trump saying he wants to eliminate the Constitution, I got to tell you, he's said that many times. I mean, he has said that the Constitution should not have anything to do with him, that he should be allowed to have as many terms as he possibly wants, that the laws really don't have anything to do with them. They believe, Trump and people like him, they believe that these laws are there for them as weapons. They're there for them to use as opposed to applying to them. There is, and I learned about this in the Midnight Kingdom, you will as well when you read it, it's the idea that there are different classes of people. There are the people who the law doesn't apply to, right? I mean, my God, they're better than the law. The law is there for the peons. It's for the people who don't actually matter, the people who need to be controlled and shaped and moved along. In all of this, Trump saying he wants to get rid of the Constitution, I mean, my God, of course he does. He has no desire whatsoever to be pinned in by laws or restrictions or any of that stuff. And the wealth class doesn't want that either. They've never believed that. It's always been a rigged game. It totally has. Why is our media not talking about it? I assume over the next couple of days, they will talk about it. It'll probably be in a couple of op-eds. It'll be something they bring up in the side or on the side, but they're not particularly interested in investigating this stuff because that would mean admitting that there's something wrong, that something is actually happening in this country. And then they would have to investigate that, and they would have to investigate their own power and their wealth at the expense of other people. So again, a lot of this mainstream media, people want to tell you that they're leftists, they're liberals, they're Democrats, or whatever. No, it's a corporatist wealth class, and they have no desire whatsoever to actually take a look at the system and how it works. They just don't. I got to tell you, it says something that I wasn't totally shocked that Donald Trump called for the end of the Constitution. I mean, he's sort of hinted at it in the past, you know. Brad says, I heard you discuss FTX a little, but can you get into the whole deal and the connection to neoliberals? Absolutely, and I'll make this quick. FTX was a total and utter scam, a Ponzi scheme, which is what so much of this NFT crypto stuff has been from the very beginning. It's a way to create money from nothing and to bilk people out of their money and then get out of it as quickly as possible and make sure you're not the chump who's holding the bag. FTX was just another one of those things, and it used wealth and power to go ahead and to create another one of these schemes. It's how it always happens. It doesn't surprise me that the Democrats or a lot of Democrats got in line with that. They gave them money. And on top of that, it was about creating new markets. The idea is that they constantly have this neoliberal class within the Democratic Party, but also the neoliberal class within the Republican Party, is that the free market's going to solve everything. It's going to completely invent new ways that are based on getting people rich, but it'll make the world better. I'm not shocked that Bill Clinton sat there with the head of FTX, that Tony Blair sat there with the head of FTX and was like, oh, these people are great. They're wonderful. You shouldn't regulate them at all. It's corruption, and it always has been. That's just what it is. It doesn't mean that they're laundering money for a specific purpose. Everybody's laundering money. The whole thing is about laundering money. And crypto is an incredible way to launder money. The entire thing is just like a big giant wash, but it's not like a Jewish conspiracy. And is there money from Ukraine going through that? No, the military industrial complex is laundering money through Ukraine. They always have. They've done it in every war. They've done it in every operation. The war on terror is still going on. That's how this stuff works. It's not just a Democratic problem. It's a Democratic-Republican problem. It is an American problem. This is a capitalism problem. And every now and then something like this goes down. Enron goes down. Crypto goes down. FTX goes down. It's a grift. That's how it goes. It's all grifts, top to bottom. That's why we have to build new structures and create something better. Oh, and Saudi Arabia, countries like them are absolutely taking advantage of that left and right. I'm watching right now. Oh, the war of drugs is absolutely another one of these things. All these structures are about laundering money. It totally has been and always has been. Right now, we're watching, the World Cup in Qatar. It's the exact same thing. It's just wealth taking advantage of greed and corruption and desperation. It's how it always works. And FTX is just the newest iteration of that we're seeing it happen. EE says, is it possible to reclaim Twitter, assuming they don't drastically alter the algorithm to deplatform voices that Musk doesn't agree with? I don't know. I think there is a real possibility that Musk will at some point sell off Twitter or bankrupt Twitter and somebody will restart it. It seems like a platform that doesn't yet have a real actual competitor. It feels like we kind of need something like a Twitter. So there's a part of me that thinks that possibly it will sort of revitalize itself or the people will reclaim it. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, it might be driven into the ground. We might never see it again. It's a hell of a question. I'm going to be taking a real look at that. I'm really interested in how is that that thing. Oh, LH says, how about the Ty B thing with the Hunter Biden thing? We're going to talk about that on the Muckrake podcast tomorrow. Woo! It is Matt Taibbi, man. I gotta tell you that I'll just say I hope the ride was worth the ticket. That's all I'll say. And by the way, I am of the opinion, I've said this multiple times. If Hunter Biden did something wrong, he should be held accountable. Like, just because you support the Democratic Party against the Republican Party doesn't mean that you should sit there and be like, oh my God, nobody did anything wrong. Just if somebody did something wrong, they should be held accountable. But my God, the Matt Taibbi thing was that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing, man. That's embarrassing. Whew. Okay, I'm going to read this question, and I want to point something out. I don't care who asks questions. I really, truly don't. Like, if somebody wants to ask me an antagonistic question, I'm a big boy. I'm 41 years old. I'm a man. I can take these questions. I'm not going to sit here and just take softballs all day. I'm more than happy to engage in antagonism. This is from someone called the Radical Center. Under the backdrop of sending billions of U.S. tax dollars monthly to arm and train Ukrainian Nazi battalions under a Democratic administration while liberals trip over themselves to pretend that isn't reality is chef's kiss. First of all, my friend, I'm not a liberal. I'm a leftist. I don't know what else to tell you. Second of all, people want to pretend that there isn't money that is ending up in the hands of Nazis and right-wing authoritarians in Ukraine. Those people aren't actually looking at what's actually happening. There are absolutely extremist, nationalist, white supremacist Nazis in Ukraine. It's a problem. It is absolutely a problem, and it's something that people should take more of a look at. I don't believe in geopolitical strategery. I'm not a geopolitical realist. I'm not saying they're saying that we should absolutely make sure that more people kill one another left and right. I think that Ukraine is a sovereign nation that shouldn't have been invaded. I think that Putin's Russia is carrying out a genocidal attack that should be stopped at all costs. But also, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it isn't absolutely a way to launder money and also engage in geopolitical strategery. All right. So I know that you think that you were asking this question of a really predictable liberal. I ain't that, man. I ain't a partisan shill. I'm like a leftist and I'm a serious person. So good luck. I hope you watch this. I hope maybe this surprises you and maybe you start to open up your ideas and expectations, because just because you and I don't necessarily agree on things doesn't make me a predictable partisan shill. So have a great Sunday. Take care. We got two more. We got one not serious and one serious question. Well, sort of serious, Oh, God, they think I'm just like some sort of liberal partisan shill. It makes me laugh every time. Ah, Rob says thank you for the words. Absolutely. I hope you're able to talk with your students. And I hope you're able to offer them comfort and hope because they deserve it. They deserve it. They're the best of us. Tuneback says, who do you like in the college football playoff? I'll tell you this. I started paying attention to college football around 1997. I really enjoyed the Michigan Wolverines back then. I root for the Michigan Wolverines. I'm from Indiana. The Indiana State Sycamores are Division II not powerhouse in college football. The Indiana Hoosiers, who I root for in college basketball, have never been that good at football. I've always enjoyed the Michigan Wolverines. I really, really hope that they pull the thing out. That would be awesome if they did. So yeah, I'm rooting for the Michigan Wolverines. That'd be awesome. I'm rooting them on pretty hardcore. I always have. Dusk Forest says, my question is, as much as I can't stand someone like Joe Rogan, would you go on a show like his to promote your book? He's sadly pretty much the biggest podcast out there. So here's the thing. I would go on Rogan's show. And I would go on Rogan's show for this reason. I know that there are a lot of people who listen to Rogan's show because a lot of them question official stories. A lot of them are sort of contrarian. They're looking for alternative explanations. I want to believe that if I went on that show, I would have it out with Rogan. I would call out a lot of the things that he's done that I think are problematic and dangerous. But I would also try and hope that my voice is getting out there and finding some people. It's the same reason I'm staying on Twitter. It's the same reason why I don't shy away from any conversations, including whoever it was that asked that question. It is not what I want. It's not what I seek. I'm not out there trying to get his attention. I'm also not trying to reach out. Like, I'm not going on Fox News. I've been asked multiple times. I'm not doing it. Quite frankly, I'm not going to go in a situation like that where people are going to edit me and move around me and try and do that. That's just not happening. I'm not going to go on Newsmax. I'm not going to go on OANN. Those places, there's something that is happening there in the way that it occurs. I would go on Rogan simply because his interviews usually go for over an hour to 2 hours, give or take. I think there would be room for an actual message to get out there. So it would be more of like a culture jamming. But I'm not looking for that. I'm not trying to get a hold of him. I'm not trying to like court his attention or whatever. But yeah, I think there are a lot of people, young men in particular, who, when they're younger and when they're insecure, as we talked about, they're looking for alternative sort of ideas, and sometimes they fall by the wayside. I would hope to be able to reach some of them. So, if I got invited, I would do it. But I would, yeah, I would smoke pot on that show and see what happens there. Yeah, I would do that. I would do that, and then I would stand my ground. I don't care. I don't care who I'm talking to. I'm not going to sit there and like ply myself into something that I'm not. I don't know how you're supposed to sleep at night, to be honest with you. I don't know how you're I, people who like sit there and lick the boot for, people they consider powerful. I just don't know how they do it. It's weird. Ugh. Anyway, that's gonna bring us to the end of the show. I'm not gonna smoke pot with me. No, the Muck Creek podcast is not gonna turn into a pot smoking podcast. I'm sorry, it's just not. I need to be sober minded, except for when I'm drinking a beer on the weekend or a live stream. That's it. I'm not gonna otherwise. I want to say, as always, thank you so much for tuning in and for all the support. You're all wonderful, kind people. I hope that you are well and that you are maintaining hope, but also that you're healing. Like I said, it's about taking care of ourselves, understanding that there's nothing wrong with us, but also that you're able to find the people in your lives that need you, that you can be there for, and you can help heal, because that is the type of stuff that is actually going to make a difference in the long run as we're engaging in solidarity and as we are facing down authoritarianism and neoliberalism and creating a better world. Couple of show notes. New Monk Creek podcast on Tuesday. We got a full show. I'm very excited about that. The episode 2 of the Midnight Kingdom lecture series is about edited and ready to go. I'm really excited about that. We are going to do another bourbon talk before Christmas. I don't know what day. It might be the 18th. Or I might get wild and do one on the 11th and the 18th. No, that's not right, because I've got other plans. So probably the 18th will be the next bourbon talk. Probably the last one of 2022 will probably be the 18th. Like I said, I will have the second episode of the Midnight Kingdom lecture series coming up maybe this week, maybe next week. We'll see. Hopefully, this week is when it'll come out. Midnight Kingdom available for pre order. I would love it if you go ahead and do that. I did a Twitter space the other day. I enjoyed it. It was decent. I'll look into more of that. I'm talking with a couple of people. Ruth Bengayat and me might do something here pretty soon. Yeah, but thank you everybody. Y'all are wonderful. I hope you have a wonderful night, and you keep me hopeful. You keep me happy. Here's to a better world. Here's to maintaining hope. Here's to working on ourselves. Here's to healing. Here's to changing the world. Here's to revolution. Cheers. All right, everybody. Good night. Have a good one.